everyone! I'm Mandy. Welcome to Souped Up Recipes. Today we're making oyster sauce from scratch. I have got so many requests on this one. The reason it took me so long to make the video is that I spent a lot of time doing research on the commercial oyster sauce making process. You'll be surprised how many variations there are. With these great informations, I tested and modified the process for home cooking. Trust me, this is going to be the best homemade oyster sauce recipe. Let's get started. I've got here 1 pound of shucked oysters. If it comes in a can like this, it usually has lots of liquid. Do not discard that liquid and do not wash the oysters either, otherwise you're wasting the flavor. Another tip that I have is if you eat shucked oysters often, you can actually collect this liquid by freezing it. Once you get a lot of it, you can just make the oyster sauce from the liquid. Here is 6 cups of water. Add 1 tablespoon of salt and stir well. This amount of salt is not the final seasoning. We still have to adjust the flavor at the end. However, a salt solution helps to extract more umami element from the oysters. Pour the oysters into a pot, including the liquid from the can. Even though we have 6 cups of water here, but we only add 1 cup at this point. Bring it to a boil and let it simmer on low heat for 5 minutes. Pour everything through a sieve. Now you have got 2 things, the blanched oysters and the blanching liquid. Traditionally, we will preserve the blanched oysters by sun-drying them. You can use the dry oysters to make other meals. We will also simmer down the blanching liquid to make oyster sauce. So traditionally, oyster sauce is a byproduct of dry oysters. However, that's not the method that we're going to do today because with this amount of blanching liquid, you end up with tiny amount of oyster sauce, like 3 tablespoons. To make a whole bottle, you'll go through like 15 kilos of oysters, which is not really worth the money and the effort. Also, I assume most of you are not Chinese, then the dry oysters becomes the byproduct that you probably were never gonna use. To continue, take the blanched oysters and put them into a blender. Add ½ inch of ginger, 2 cloves of garlic, 1 scallion, and 1 shallot. Pour in 1 cup of the salt solution. Blend everything into a puree. Make sure you get a powerful blender so you can maximize the flavor. Pour it back into the sauce pot and simmer it for another 5 minutes. This time, you will need a big cheesecloth. The puree is too hot, so I'm going to pour in some of the remaining salt solution to cool it down. Don't forget to rinse the blender cup so you don't waste any flavor. Then squeeze with your hands. Continue to rinse with the rest of the salt solution in batches. The squeezing will take about 15 minutes. In the factory, this process is done with the biological enzymolysis technology and centrifuge machines. We don't have the equipment, so we are using a blender and a cheesecloth at home. Now you can discard the solid part of the oysters. We don't need that anymore. After all that work, we collected a big pot of oyster liquid, which looks kind of like soy milk. Well, you can tell that it has so much more flavor compared to the first batch of the blanching liquid. The next step is to simmer it down. Actually, this pot is too small. I'm going to switch to a bigger pot for better evaporation. Bring the liquid to a boil. Then turn the heat to low and evaporate it for 1 to 1.5 hours. Every stove is different, so you will have to keep an eye on the pot to make sure it is not evaporated too dry. I'm going to transfer this pot to the stove back there. While waiting, we can caramelize the sugar. In the sauce pot, Add the sugar, then turn the heat to medium. Wait for a few minutes and you will see the edge start changing color. You can stir to even it out. Continue to heat until all the sugar is melted and the color becomes golden brown. This process is very fast, like 6 to 8 minutes or so. Now we pour in 2 cups of water. Be careful, don't let the steam burn you. Put on the lid and bring it to a simmer over medium heat. Stir to make sure the caramel is fully dissolved. A lot of factories use sugar directly, but I think the caramelization does add a nice taste to the oyster sauce. Turn off the heat and remove it to the side. Now let's bring back the oyster liquid and check it out. It has been 45 minutes. You can see on the side, the color changes to brown already. We want all the liquid to turn into a light brown color. Looks like it still needs some time to go, so I waited for another 15 minutes. This is how it looks. You see these big bubbles? That means it's very thick. You have to be careful here not to burn it, otherwise it will bring a bitter taste. Turn the heat to the lowest and continue to stir for 2 more minutes. It will get thicker and thicker. The color would continue to darken a little bit more. Eventually, it becomes sticky like glue. This is what we call oyster concentrate. It is too flavorful to cook with. You have to dilute it with the caramel sugar solution that we made. Remove the pot from the stove and take some time to stir well. This is gonna take a while because the oyster paste are very sticky. The ratio between the amount of oysters that you started with and the amount of water that you use to make the caramel solution decides the quality of your oyster sauce. The part where we add water, blend the oyster, go through a sieve and squeeze doesn't matter because no matter how much water you used, you evaporate it all. Some factories will do 1:10 ratio, which is pretty decent quality. Some cheap ones will dilute it more than 100 times. I want to make my oyster sauce have better quality, so I didn't make that much caramel solution. With this ratio, the cost of making your own oyster sauce is not cheaper compared to the store-bought, unless you want to dilute it more. If you do, then you have to adjust the seasoning with the equal ratio. Now all the oyster paste is dissolved. It looks very close to the final product already. Put it back on the stove. We're going to do the final adjustment. 2 tablespoons plus 2 teaspoons of salt in addition to the first tablespoon that we added to the water. I did the math based on the nutrition fact label. With my calculation, you can equally interchange the homemade oyster sauce with the store-bought. Of course, you can make it low sodium if you want. Alright, the salt has dissolved. Let's continue by adding 1.5 tablespoons of dark soy sauce. I do want to mention that dark soy sauce contains wheat, so if you are on a gluten-free diet, you can skip it. It does not affect the taste. A lot of oyster sauce factories will add monosodium glutamate, aka MSG, to enhance the flavor. That is because they probably diluted the oyster paste too much. With my ratio, I don't think you need that. However, if you are a fan of Uncle Roger, feel free to dump in 1 tablespoon of MSG. Last, we will thicken the sauce with some cornstarch water. This is just 3 tablespoons of water mixed with 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch. Add it in batches and keep an eye on the consistency. Stir over low heat until thickened. That looks so beautiful. Most of the commercial oyster sauce contains food additives such as carrageenan or guar gum to adjust the consistency and preservatives for a longer shelf life. All of that is not necessary for home cooking. Alright, now you have made oyster sauce from real oysters. The next step is very important. You have to store it correctly. What I normally do is putting the oyster sauce in multiple mason jars. I'll keep one jar in the fridge, which will stay good for 2 months. You can freeze the rest of the jars. They'll stay good for up to 12 months. You don't need to worry about the glass jar breaking because the sauce will not solidify due to the high sugar and salt content. Now let's do a taste test. I'm actually comparing it with the Lee Kum Kee Premium Oyster Sauce. This is actually the good quality option. A lot of the oyster sauce out on the market, you can't really call them oyster sauce. They should be called oyster flavored seasoning. That's the truth. All right, this bottle is empty because I haven't been buying oyster sauce for a while now. All right, I have to really just stick a chopstick in to get a little bit from the bottom. Don't mind me. Now let's taste the homemade one. Wow. Even though I have compared the flavor between them many times in the past while testing, but still, I'm amazed by the difference. It's significant. I mean, the sweetness and the saltiness are similar because, I calculated based on the label, but the oyster flavor and the umami taste is just so much stronger. It will make a difference if you use it to make recipes that ask for a decent amount of oyster sauce. You get so much benefit making it at home. No food additives. You can do low sodium, less sugar, or gluten-free, however you want. All right, that is all the information for today. I hope you give this oyster sauce a try soon. Do leave a comment below and let me know how it goes. If you want to see me make other sauces or ingredients from scratch, such as light soy sauce, dark soy sauce, soybean paste, hoisin sauce, fermented black bean sauce, or lao gan ma, or any other Chinese ingredients that you can't find, leave a comment below and I'll make it in the future. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!